Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 600, right? Is it TowerGate day number 600? I do believe it is. Yes, I do believe it is. And that would be November the 6th, 2018, Tuesday. The big day. Our big day. Because we are going to have a big day. In fact, by the time you're watching this video, voting will be underway. And I think we're going to have a really good day. And, as you probably noticed, I'm sporting my MAGA hat just for the occasion. That's right, I've got my MAGA hat and I'm ready to go. Ready for a big midterm win. And looking forward to those compilation videos of more epic meltdowns. Meltdowns from the loony left. Think how much fun we're going to have over the next few days. It's going to be a blast. A real blast. Now, I do want to say that over the past week or two, I've been constantly adjusting on the volume on my videos. I'm trying to get rid of those annoying pops that you sometimes hear. And they usually occur when I say a word that starts with the word P, as in Papagalopoulos. Papagalopoulos. Every time I say Papagalopoulos, if I'm sitting a little too close, it produces a pop. I'm trying to get rid of that. See, I have a bad habit. I'm not a professional broadcaster, right? So I don't have like a really professional microphone with all the stuff going on that blocks those sorts of things. And I have a bad habit of leaning back and moving up and leaning back. And sometimes I'll raise my voice and I'll lean forward too. And then I blast the microphone that gives you that annoying pop. So I'm trying to get rid of that. But in the process, I probably took the volume down too low, made it difficult for some of you to hear yesterday, and maybe even the day or two before when I lowered it again. So anyway, I've adjusted my volume back up to where it was about 2 weeks ago, and I'm just going to have to try and be more careful about when I raise my voice. I'm going to have to lean back a little bit, and I'm going to have to be careful whenever I say the word Papagalopoulos. Papagalopoulos. Hey, but I'm sure, hey, Major Mac, he's probably sitting there going, man, is that a B-29 over Mike's left shoulder? Yes, it is, Major Mac. It's the Flying Fortress, the B-29, just in time for the midterms. Let's have a look at this baby. Oh, my. Here we go. The B-29, the Flying Fortress. Look at that beauty. Look at that beauty. Have you ever seen a more beautiful thing in your entire life than the B-29 Flying Fortress? My. Just in time for the midterms. In fact, it's probably on a bombing run now. And where do you think it may be bombing? I don't know. Why don't we check in with the crew to see what may be going on the B-29? Probably sounds something like this.
All right, fellas, we're coming up on that first target. Bombardier. Get that target in your sight. Prepare for bomb away. Okay, coming up on that first target, and it looks like it's going to be it looks like it's the DNC, the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Alrighty, let's check in and see.
And down in the DNC headquarters, down there we have Pelosi and Tom Perez. I wonder what they're thinking. Gosh, Tom, do you hear that noise? What do you think that is? Well, I don't know, Nancy, but it kind of sounds like a B-29 on a bombing run. But there ain't no B-29s over the DNC. Couldn't be. Hell, the B-29s hadn't flown in 40 years.
All right, crew, we're coming up on the target. Bombardier, open the doors. Get ready on my mark. 2, 1, bombs away. Alrighty, well done, Bombardier, well done. Target destroyed. One DNC, splash one DNC, target destroyed. Well done, Bombardier. Alrighty, where are we going next? Well, it looks like we're going to, let's see. What's next on the... Oh, it looks like we're headed to CNN. CNN. Let's check in down there at CNN on our way to the bombing target.
This is Don Lemon. Yes, that orange Trump Hitler and his racist supporters tomorrow are in for a big surprise. They're in for a big surprise when we have that big blue
Bombs away. Target was, target bombs away, bombed away, bombed away.
Oh my. It's a big day. It's a big day for the crew of the B-29. 2 bogies destroyed.
Where are we headed next, Captain? Well, bomb crew, it looks like we're headed now to MSNBC. MSNBC. Let's check in down there and see what's going on. Wait a minute, Captain. I got something coming up on my 6. Coming up on my 6. What is that, Captain? Can you see that? Well, hell, that looks like... That's a damn unicycle. No, that's a... It's some kind of whirly bird. Who's driving that thing? Well, it's Joe and Mika. It's Joe and Mika. Tail gunner, can you take that target? Roger that, Captain. We'll get it right now. Roger that, Captain. Bogey destroyed. Joe and Mika going down. Going down. Splash one bogey. One bogey.
Yes, folks. That's what it's going to be like tomorrow. It's going to be like the Flying Fortress, the B-29. Blowing up the whole show, my friends. Blowing up the blue wave. There ain't no blue wave. No, no, no. My friends. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. Yes. Looking at some of the races, they are tightening up, as you have probably heard. This is always what happens when you get the day before Election Day, and also it's a day that the pollsters actually have to start telling the truth, because it's the day before the election that they'll use in the next election to show you how accurate they were. So now they're having to spread the word. It doesn't look like there's going to be a blue wave. There was never going to be a blue wave. Never. This is nothing more. Tomorrow will be nothing more than a continuation of 2016. Now, we do have the issues with, in a midterm election, the party in power usually loses seats 3 times in the last 100 years. It has not happened, but it usually does happen. Plus, we have the Republicans defending 40 open seats. And it's really hard to hold 40 open seats. And we know that the the GOP, pulled the resources from about 12 to 15 or so races about 2 weeks ago because they had to cut their losses. Okay, well, here's the races we have to focus on, and we have to let these go. Maybe we win and maybe we don't, but we have to reshuffle our resources. The Democrats did the exact same thing. They did the exact same thing. Both Republicans and Democrat Party are reshuffling the resources over the past couple weeks, looking at the races they think they can win, the races they don't think they can win, and they're readjusting where the resources go. So we've seen a lot of that happen over the last 2 weeks, and so, you know, we can expect, like I said, that we're going to lose some seats probably in the House. It's not impossible that we could gain seats in the House. It's certainly possible. That would then probably qualify as a red tsunami. I just think that's going to be very difficult to do. Not because of Trump or anything else. It's because we have a lot of very lame Republicans. Remember, a lot of these Republicans were anti-Trumpers. A lot of these Republicans are not necessarily campaigning as hard as they could. So if it was Donald Trump running in 435 districts, we'd probably win in a some sort of a red wave, red tsunami landslide. But it's not Donald Trump running in 435 races. It's a bunch of Republicans. Some of them are pretty good, and some of them are hacks. So that's what we're dealing with. But anyway, we are seeing the polls tighten, and I do expect that we're going to have a very good night. As you know, I made my prediction back on TowerGate Day 582 about 2.5 weeks ago. 57 seats in the Senate and 222 in the House. I have never changed that prediction. It's staying pretty much where it was. And it's based largely on gut instinct, looking at not so much the polls, but just looking at the races and the individual players. In the 38, if you remember, about 2 weeks ago, we went through the 38 critical House seats. And I just looked at those 38 seats race by race. And I looked a lot at the individuals and, of course, the voting district and that sort of thing. So that's how I kind of arrived at my number. And so I do predict that we are going to have a very good night in the Senate. 57 seats, I think, is very possible. And we could even do better. But 57 seats, if we get like 60 and get a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, that would be a red tsunami. If we get 25, 30 plus seats in the House, that would also qualify. So I could be wrong. It could be a red tsunami. Many of you in the comments section, I think Faye was talking about, yes, it could be, might as well be a red tsunami, and I hope Faye is correct. I'm just kind of going on my, best guess and my best gut instinct is that I believe that it's going to be a very good night for Republicans. I think we'll hold the House. I think it'll be a slim majority. In this case, I believe about 6-seat majority, which is all you need to keep the gavel out of the hands of that crazy woman, Pelosi. But I think that we're going to do very well in the Senate. And in fact, I was just looking at some data coming out of Michigan just in the past couple hours. And it looks like that John James is really closing up on that, closing in that race in Michigan with Debbie Stabenow and making some people very nervous in Michigan. Now, if we pick up, there's 2 seats that I think are very critical seats in the Senate to watch, which will tell us a lot of things. And we'll know about these races early on in the night because they're on the East Coast or eastern part of the country, and that is the race in Michigan and the race in New Jersey. If, in fact, we win that race in New Jersey, Menendez is defeated. If John James defeats Stabenow in Michigan, and we'll know that pretty early on in the evening, relatively speaking, probably around 11:30 night, maybe around midnight. But we should know the results of that race. And if it turns out that if the Republicans do win that race in Michigan or that race or both in New Jersey and Michigan, that will be an indicator that we are looking at a red tsunami. Absolutely. Because that means that all these other races that were nowhere near as close as those are probably going to go red. And that could mean literally a 58, 59, 60 seats in the Senate for the Republicans. So we'll be watching those 2 Senate races. I'll be watching those 2 Senate races very carefully as the evening goes on. Again, John James in Michigan, the race in New Jersey. If those 2 Senate seats go to the Republicans, it's going to be an extraordinary night for Republicans. It is going to be, those will be indicators that it's going to be absolutely a red tsunami. There's a couple other races that I'm watching in the House, about 8 or 10 races in the House, which I believe are going to be early indicators of whether or not we are looking at something really special happening on election night. And so I'm going to go through some of these races because these are really pivotal races that are going to tell us a lot about how the rest of the country may go. So I'm going to go through a few of these races for you. The one I'll be watching very, very closely. And again, the main reason I'm saying this, not just because they're races which just the matchups are very, very close, and they are in purple or swing type places, or they're the opposite. They're a Republican running in somewhere where Hillary won by a considerable margin, but it's a close race, or vice versa, a place where Trump won pretty handily, but there's a Democrat running a very close race against a Republican where Trump did well. These are the 8 or 10 that I spotted fall in this category. But what these all have in common is that they're all in the eastern part of the country, which means we'll have these will be the first races that we'll have some pretty good ideas about how they're going to go early on in the night. So let's go through some of these, the ones I'll be watching very carefully. I'll be watching very, very closely on the Kentucky 6th, right along with a lot of people. This is going to tell us a lot. This is Andy Barr against Amy McGrath. Trump won here by 15%. Andy Barr is, I think, already served 3 two-year terms. He'd be running for his 4th term, I believe. And Amy McGrath is a very good candidate for a Democrat. Obviously, she's lying about what she believes and what she will do. She's running as a Republican, but we know she'll vote with Pelosi on every opportunity. She, I believe, was a Marine Corps pilot. She's was a prosecutor. So she's a fairly strong candidate for a Democrat and an exceptionally good liar. And so she has got, I think, a slight lead in this race right now. And so if Andy Barr is able to come back and score a win here, it's going to tell us an awful lot about the way this night could go, because this will be a classic case of a Democrat who was leading the day before, less than 24 hours before the vote, was showing with the lead, and would lose the race. And that would be a signal. And this is a place where a Democrat could win. And this is a very good Democratic candidate right here, for a Democratic candidate, of course. So this will be one of them races that will be an indicator of how the night will go. Then we look at this Virginia race with an amazing Republican, Dave Brat. He's the guy who blew out Eric Cantor, who nobody thought would be defeated. He was the number 3 man in the House. He was right under Paul Ryan. He, in fact, right now, if he hadn't been blown out, he would probably be the next speaker after Paul Ryan. But Dave Brat defeated him in that race in Virginia. And Brat is up against Abigail Spanberger, who we know that there has been unbelievable amounts of money, outside money coming from other places, pouring into this race. They really want to defeat Dave Brat, not just because he's a Republican, but because he knocked out a heavy-duty establishment politician. And again, they're all on the same team. Eric Cantor was part of the swamp. And Spanberger is part of the swamp herself. She's, I think, retired CIA. So a lot of people watching this race with Dave Brat and Abigail Spanberger, Virginia. This is again, it's going to be one of the key things. If Brat wins that race, it's going to tell us a lot, because it means that these Republicans who have been running into incredible amounts of money out of the state, pouring into the races, are able to stand up and still hold their position and win these races despite the massive money that's been poured into these campaigns and efforts to blow them out. And I don't know that the GOP has been working all that hard for Brat, really. It doesn't appear that way. But we'll see how Dave Brat does there in Virginia. We also have the race in North Carolina's 9th. That's Mark Harris and McCready. Trump won here by 12 points, but this is in a dead heat, and it's pretty much a purple district, right? So this is another race that we'll have the results on very early. If Mark Harris can pull this out, it'll be another indicator of big money coming into a district where the Democrats really targeted this, thought they could win here. A lot of resources put into this race, everything they had, the kitchen sink, everything they got. If Mark Harris can win this race, it'll tell us a lot about which way this thing's going to go. We have a very similar situation again in the Ohio 12th with Troy Balderson and Danny O'Connor. We know that Trump was just here in Ohio. He was up in Cleveland yesterday. He's been down here near Cincinnati a few times. He's campaigned for Balderson a couple times, really pushing Balderson a lot. This is another one of them races. It's in a very equally divided district. Could go either way. Democrats pouring tons of money in here. O'Connor, not a bad candidate for a Democrat. And this is going to be another indicator race that we'll be following very closely. Ohio 12th. And by the way, let me mention something else that's happened in Ohio in the last, just in the last 3 to 4 days. We have now seen Sherrod Brown, who had a very, very commanding lead over Jim Renacci. That race is now within the margin of error. Renacci has literally drawn within 2 to 3 points of Sherrod Brown here for the Ohio, that Senate seat, and now they're calling it within the margin of error. It's just a couple of points. It's very likely, and this was one that the Democrats, they didn't even call this a toss-up. This was in the solid blue. Well, it was likely blue for, it was solid blue for a long time, then likely blue, then it moved back to solid blue, and now they have it as a toss-up. Literally in the last three to 4 days, Renacci has closed about a 12-point gap. Amazing move here in Ohio. And here in our governor's race, it's another dead heat. I think DeWine has a 1 point lead, and he's a rotten candidate, by the way. Mike DeWine sucks, and everyone knows it. Okay, everyone in here in Ohio knows Mike DeWine sucks. He was never much a big supporter of Trump, but boy, in the past 2 weeks, he's been kissing a lot of Trump ass. And as he's been kissing Trump ass, you know, his number's been going up. In fact, his ad that he was running yesterday, that I got hit with like 19 times, was regardless of how Trump tweets, Mike DeWine is with him. And the worst thing they can do is show a picture of Mike DeWine. The guy just looks crazy. Okay, if they just get his picture off the screen, it would be better. Just take his picture off the screen, okay? Because he looks nutty, all right? So anyway, good news here in Ohio. Jim Renacci's closed it to within the margin of error. Sherrod Brown is shaking in his boots. He canceled some things today in order to deal with the situation. And, of course, now we have Mike DeWine just about a percentage point ahead in the governor race. So things have really tightened up here in Ohio. That's also an indicator race. If Jim Renacci defeats Sherrod Brown, because we're talking tremendous resources going into Sherrod Brown. I mean, the Democrats, I mean, this is a seat that they always really go hard for, and they succeed about half the time. And we know that Sherrod Brown is personally bankrolled by the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Sherrod Brown is a very loyal disciple of a demented disciple nonetheless, of the Rotten Reverend Clinton, and big Clinton money always behind Sherrod Brown. It's very good possibility as we sit here right now that if things continue the way they're going, the way the polls have tightened, it's very likely that Jim Renacci could defeat Sherrod Brown. If that happens, my friends, we may be looking at a red tsunami. Florida, the 27th district. Again, here you have Donna Shalala. Taking on Maria Salazar. Another race. Clinton won this district by 20 points. And of course, Donna Shalala was Bill Clinton's Health and Human Services Director. She is a far left-wing lunatic to the nth degree. They poured tons of money. This is literally a seat the Democrats thought, oh, pop Donna Shalala in there. It's a gimme. It's a walkaway. Just her name alone, connected to Bill Clinton, serving his administration, the Rotten Reverend Clinton, her money, the DNC money. They just thought that they just checked this one off as being a Democrat win. Not so fast. Not so fast, because Maria Salazar is putting up a hell of a fight. This is another race right here, the Florida 27th, with Shalala and Salazar as another race to watch as a key indicator of how the night might go. Next up, you want to watch New Jersey's 3rd with MacArthur versus Andy Kim. This is another one of those races that is going to be a key indicator. It's pretty tough to win anywhere in New Jersey, right? But again, we see that the governor's race, or the Senate race there with Menendez, has tightened up. It's possible that could be if Menendez goes down, the Senate could very likely end up with 58, 59 seats. It's very possible. If you can beat Menendez in New Jersey, you can beat anybody anywhere. And here we see MacArthur and Andy Kim tied in a very tight race. MacArthur, the Republican, Andy Kim, the Democrat. That's the New Jersey 3rd. We'll be watching that very closely. We have the Pennsylvania race there. Another place is very tough. We have Fitzpatrick versus Scott Wallace. Fitzpatrick, the Republican. Watching that very close. Also within the margin of error, a race that has been back and forth. It has tightened up. And again, this is another indicator. If we win this New Jersey 3rd, it could very well be an indicator of a big night for the Republicans in the House, and likely in the Senate as well. If we do really well in the House, we're going to do fantastic in the Senate, because we're going to do better in the Senate than we do in the House. So if it's a really good night for the House, it'll be an unbelievable night for the Senate. You can take that to the bank. Then we have Minnesota, another place that's a very close one to watch. We have Eric Paulson running against Dean Phillips, a Democrat. This is another race that's a very key indicator race that's being watched very closely by a lot of people. Could tell us a lot about another indicator of which way the rest of the night's going to go. And keep in mind, we're going to have results. These are all races where the polling, these are all Eastern Standard Time races, which means, Eastern Standard Time, we'll have these polls will close somewhere around here in Ohio at 7:30. I think Kentucky it's 7 or 7:30. Other places it may be up until 8. But most of the polling in these races that we're talking about right now, the polls will be closed by 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we'll know a lot. And so when we start getting out to the Western time zones, the Central and Western time zones, which are 2-3 hours behind, by that point in the night, we should know a lot about how a lot of these races are looking. And if these races are trending red, we can assume that we're going to do pretty damn well, because we've already gotten numbers on the key 8 races in California that the Democrats were counting on. We know they're probably going to lose at least 7, maybe all 8 of those races they had targeted as seats that they were definitely going to pick up. We also have seen plenty of polling in the Nevada and Arizona, and we are doing Republicans doing very well in the early voting in both of those states. Have a big important Senate race in both of those states as well. So those are important, and we're going to know a lot about how those races might go based on these races that we're looking at right here. The next race that everybody's watching obviously very closely is this district in Indiana between Braun and Donnelly, the Senate seat. Is what we're talking about here. The Senate seat, this is not a House race, this is a Senate. In fact, these are all Senate seats. The race between Braun and Donnelly, the ones we just went through were all House seats. We're now in Senate seats, okay? So Braun versus Donnelly. The last time I looked, Braun had a slight edge. I think it's very likely that we could take that seat in Indiana. Florida, of course, Rick Scott, Bill Nelson. The last time I looked, Bill Nelson had a slight edge, but we know that the early voting has favored Republicans. We expect on election day today that we'll see an overwhelming majority for Republicans voting. So I think that whoever wins that race in Florida for the Senate seat there, whether it's Scott or Nelson, it's going to be within probably 2 points. It's going to be a close race, probably going to be a recount. Then we have, of course, McCaskill and Hawley. Hawley is ahead in that race. I expect it'll stay that way. Again, we talked about the New Jersey race with Huggan and Menendez. Huggan was closing in, but in the last 2 or 3 days, Menendez has pulled away a little bit. But again, we expect on election day, Republican vote is heavier. We expect that if it's heavy enough, it could pull that race. It will be obviously within 1, maybe 2 points. And that's an indicator race as well to see how the Senate will go in the rest of the country. We'll know about that race pretty early on in the night. Of course, Blackburn versus Bredesen. I think that one's a see you later. I think Blackburn has that one in the bag, my friends. McSally and Sinema. That's another race that's been back and forth, back and forth. The polls are all over the place out there. You can look at 10 different polls. They show you 10 different things. Who knows? But we know that Arizonans are, those 2 seats have been held by Republicans. Honestly, they weren't good Republicans. It was Senator Magoo and Jeff the Flake. But so they get like moderate Republicans. McSally may be a little more moderate than the typical conservative, but that's where you got to be to win in Arizona. I think McSally is there. Lots of money going into this race. Lots of bullshit going on in this race. Just too close to call. But again, if these other states that we're talking about, especially in Michigan or New Jersey, win, I think if Michigan and New Jersey go Republican, every one of these I think will fall Republican. And of course, the ultimate race to watch, again, is John Cox out there in California. I just see no way he can win. I mean, I looked at some polls last night. Democrats are ahead in voting there. It's like 1.028 million votes ahead or something. It's over 1 million votes ahead. California's a big state. They have a lot of voters. 1 million is not that much, I guess, in a state as big as California. It just seems like a really big number to have to overcome. And when you go in on election day, when voting starts on election day, you're down over 1 million votes, right? That's a pretty tough deal. But I still think, as I said, that Cox is going to do better than a lot of people think. I believe he will lose, but I don't think he's going to lose by double digits, not by 12, 13, 15 points that he was looking at 4, 5, 6 months ago. I think that race is going to tighten up, and I think Cox is going to put a little scare into the Democrats there in California. I think he probably ends up losing, maybe coming up 5 to 7% short in vote. But again, as I've said before, I think Newsom's going to be such a disaster that in 2 years they'll have a recall election and throw his butt out. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So anyway, that is the races that I'll be watching as indicators. Will tell us a lot about how the map's going to play out over the rest of the country, I believe. The two most interesting races to me right now are the Senate race, three really interesting Senate races. Of course, the one here in Ohio with Renacci and the Goon, Sherrod Brown. And, of course, the race in Michigan, that would be unbelievable if John James defeats Stabenow. I mean, she's been so far ahead for so long. I mean, he's never been anywhere really near her. He got within 6 points, then he dropped again, got behind again by 11, 12. Now he's drawn up within 5, 6, 7 points of her again. So anything could happen in Michigan. The numbers in Michigan show that Republicans are turning out in greater numbers to vote and early voting the Democrats, and that's very, very good for John James. So we just have to watch. You don't know. I mean, you just don't know until we have the vote. Anything can happen. Like I said, although I don't believe there's any such possible way any blue wave could happen. It's possible a red tsunami could happen. That would be, I think, low on the odds. But what I do believe is that the Republicans are going to have a very good night. We're all going to be very happy and celebratory. We're not going to win every race. But I do believe we're going to accomplish the most important thing, and that is I think we're going to get a clear spread of at least 5 Senate seats over the Democrats in the Senate. I believe that we will hold the House. It will likely be very close, in my opinion. We may only have a 5 or 6 seat edge in the House, but that's okay. It keeps the gavel in the hands of, hopefully, Jim Jordan. So there we go, my friends. I'm sure you're all very excited. Hopefully you all got your MAGA hats on. Hopefully you're all prepared for a very long day. And again, I think there's something we have to keep in mind is that it's very likely with as many close races as that we're looking at that we are probably not going to have a clear indication of who won every race on Wednesday when the smoke clears. I think there's going to be races that are so close there's going to be recounts. How many? I don't know, but there could be 5, 6, 10 recount races. You could even have some races that end up, in court. It could be weeks before we know. Hopefully, it won't be a situation where it's something that will decide who keeps control of the House. Hopefully, that won't be the case. Hopefully, it won't be something like that. Hopefully, it'll just be clear. Hopefully, it will be clear on Wednesday who's going to be in control of the House and the Senate. And that while there may be some races that are recounted, or maybe even some, maybe 1 or 2 that go into the courts. Hopefully, they will not be races that are going to decide who has control of the House. That could get really, really ugly because again, the Democrats would literally try to drag this out for 2 years until 2020 if they could, so that we would be in a state of limbo or something. But I don't think that'll happen. Of course, whenever you have elections and these races go into the courts, they get them expedited very, very quickly. Many of you remember the Bush-Gore 2000 race with the hanging chads. It came down to Florida. They put that together very quickly. They put a team together. They put the legal people together, the experts in voting together, and they resolved that pretty quickly. And that was a presidential race, and Gore was challenging it. So they got that sorted out fairly quickly, and I think that would be the case as well. So it's just that we could have a lot of these. We could have, a dozen or more of these, hand count recounts, and we could have maybe a couple go into the courts. We'll have to watch. It's going to be an extraordinary evening, regardless of what happens. It's going to be a pivotal moment in history, regardless of where you stand. But the way I see it, this is really a continuation of 2016. I think the enthusiasm and the get out the vote are always the two most important things, especially in a midterm. And we know already that the Republicans on the get out the vote side of things have done extremely well. We're leading in early voting. That's a very good indicator. And we know there is no enthusiasm gap at all. With what happened with the Kavanaugh situation, the migrant caravan, the incredible job numbers, the smears and the slams, and the craziness that we see on the left. People are watching this stuff. They understand exactly what it is that they're looking at. Sane people, regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat, are watching what is going on. They're paying attention, my friends. They're paying attention. And if it wasn't for the Republicans dropping the ball so badly on repeal of Obamacare, this would be a red tsunami, and I would not doubt it or question it at all. That was a big mistake. It's going to hurt us in this election, but I still think we come out with a very, very good night and a very big win for the Republicans. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow on Wednesday, and we will sort all of this out. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a good night. Bye.